Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Midday Western U.S. Regional Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. Well, I thought we'd start off by taking a look at soil moisture. This is a map across the whole U.S. that shows us here the percent of saturation for the first 3 feet of the soil here. And there's a few things I want to kind of point out. When we look across much of the West Coast, we do see a lot of our soils are well above the 50% mark in terms of being saturated. We do have a couple of areas, though, that are showing a little bit drier. So parting here in the Columbia Basin, we see some of the numbers getting down there around 50 and the 40%. And then there's an interesting thing happening here in California, where we have the San Joaquin Valley showing up with relatively drier soils, which is actually typical of this time of year, whereas the Sacramento Valley is actually showing up quite wet. And we know that much of the last month has been very wet for Northern California, coastal Oregon, and Washington. So when we take a look at this compared to the U.S. Drought Monitor, there's nothing that's alarming about the previous map compared to this map. And to be honest with you, this is a pretty good way to get into our growing season in terms of moisture. And even the region that's here in parts of northern, especially northern Washington, northern Idaho, where things have been dry, we know that over the last 30 days, we've actually had pretty decent flow into this area leading up to the drier time period that we're in right now. So we picked up some good moisture at the very end of the season that has helped things out in that region. Now, you look down here into California like, whoa, look how dry it's been. Well, we got to remember, we're supposed to be getting dry this time of year in California, and our reservoir levels plus our snowpack in the mountains is phenomenal. We are going into the growing season with plenty of water for the state of California. We just got a little bit more, though, over the last 24 hours here, last 48 hours actually. We have this upper level low that kind of just snuck through Southern California here, bringing in some precipitation. Turns out this is going to be the one that's going to be causing major problems for the middle section of the country in the coming days, and it's sitting right here right now. Now, for much of the western part of the United States, the flow pattern is largely split out west, and because of that, it's progressing very slowly. So the next time we really bring in significant precipitation, especially for California, and when I say significant, I'm talking significant based on California standards for the dry season, is this little trough that's sitting right into this area. It's got to move slowly over the coming days before it finally gives us a chance at some cloud cover and precipitation for parts of Southern California. Otherwise, outside of that, things are looking relatively dry. Now, since we're talking about precipitation here, at least let's rewind the clock back for the last 3 days. Montana, you've been kind of taking it on the chin here in terms of the cold snap and the snow. So certainly we've picked up quite a bit of snow there here at the end of April, and this is having an impact on winter wheat and also a spring wheat planting, but maybe that moisture going into the ground will be good as temperatures do slowly rebound for pasture growth, which will be great for as we start off this next growing season here. What are we worried about this week? Well, because the flow pattern is going to a pretty big ridge over Alaska, and because we have a trough that's stuck in central Canada, we're going to be seeing some pretty chilly overnight low temperatures across much of the Pacific Northwest and also some of the higher elevations once we get into the Intermountain West. And so we have a couple of regions where we have freeze warnings out, Columbia River Basin there, but also the Columbia Plateau, and then getting down here into parts of Northern California and this particular section of Nevada. Meanwhile, southern Montana, we still have the risk of having the precipitation there, falling snow in the southern part of the state with time here. But let's just take a look at what these temperatures are doing before we come back to precip. We see that over the next 5 days, because of the presence of that upper level trough, the flow pattern is largely doing something like this. And we have this ridge over the southeast. We're going to be bringing in some cold temperatures. Now, the cold temperatures are seen here because we're going to have what's called a large diurnal swing in temperature, diurnal meaning day. So early morning lows creeping down toward that freezing mark and below, and it'll be elevation dependent, but our afternoon highs might be 30 and in some locations 40 degrees warmer than the overnight lows. But overall, our pattern here is set up just like this. So if we just take a look at what those overnight low temperatures are going to be, this is going to play quickly, but I'll stop it and bring it back here. I got to slow that animation down. You can see here early Tuesday morning, you can tell where the low temperatures are. Look, boy, parts of Montana down here in the teens, and I'm talking off the mountains here. We're in the teens and lower 20s. But look at this surrounding here like Yakima and Yakima Valley. We're going to get temperatures in here that are getting into the low to middle 30s. All of eastern Oregon really here, getting into the 30s. As we progress into the day on Wednesday, you can see a very similar pattern. Snake River Valley seeing temperatures getting down toward freezing. And as we progress into the day on Thursday, we're going to start to see things moderate by the time we get towards Friday. Saturday, and Sunday. So we've got some cold temperatures to be dealing with over the next couple of days here. And this, we would call this unseasonably cold. So that's why we have the freeze warnings and advisories out. Now, what that needs to be put in the context of is where we currently sit in terms of growing degree day anomalies. Now, I'm using a base of 50, and I'm only starting on March 1st. March 1st here through yesterday. And when we look here, we see basically things are pretty darn close to average across much of the West. Where you just see the lighter shading of red there, we're basically just 1 or 2 days ahead of what we would be normally. And you see some of the cooler temperatures that we have there. Now, it's still been very warm down here. Not this is down in the desert here, I know. But we're a little behind. Now, look at this, though. San Joaquin Valley is ahead. Sacramento Valley is slightly behind. Very interesting to see there. A lot of that has to do with cloud cover and precipitation throughout the month of March and early April. So I want to see kind of some of the differences there. Looking at precip over the next 5 days, things are relatively calm over the next 5 days. We certainly have some precip to be dealing with in the Intermountain West today and tomorrow as that shortwave kind of moves through that area. But much of the country is focused on the incredibly heavy rainfall that's happening inside this quarter. So just to let you know what's going on the other side of the mountains, flood watches in through this area. We are not planting anything right now in the midsection of the country. It's cold and it's wet in places. It's cold in places south of about a line right here, and then it is very wet outside of that. Southeast, by the way, just so you have an idea, is very, very warm, and they are seeing high pressure protecting what's going on over there. So when are we going to see our next chance at precip? Well, remember, we have that trough that's kind of, remember the flow's doing this? So we have this trough that's sitting in this area. So that's why you're starting to see some of the higher elevation snow and the general scattered showers and thunderstorms in the Intermountain West. But watch, after we kind of click play on our European model here, things kind of calm down. This is, I just got you out through Thursday pretty quickly there. So look, by Wednesday that pushes east. And the next thing we're watching is this right here. So as I move forward, we're just going to watch this slowly migrate by that Sunday morning. That just took you through the next week here. Such that by Sunday afternoon into Monday, that upper level trough is finally interacting with what's going on over here in California. Now, this will most likely just be a coastal and then elevation-driven precipitation event. So Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin Valley, we're not expecting much precipitation out of this. But overall, due to ridging that's happening south of the Gulf of Alaska, we're overall protected from a lot of precipitation as we move into the next 8 to 10 days. So thinking about the longer term here as we finish up this video, the 6 to 10 day temperature forecast is over here on the left. And the cooler anomalies that you see here in California, this is primarily due to that trough that swings through this weekend. So that's in that 6 to 10 day time period, so slightly cooler than average. Until then, warm temperatures. And because of the location and resistance to move this giant trough that's sitting over central Canada, we keep kind of pushing that colder air into Montana with time. Things do alleviate by the time we get into the 11 to 15 day forecast overall across much of the western United States, although it seems as though Montana still tries to hang on to a bit of a cooler bias. What about week 2 precipitation as we kind of wrap this video up here? Well, we're tending to see the overall flow of the atmosphere featuring this pattern that wants to do something like this with time. And as a consequence, this is generally a drier pattern. We do see, getting into next week, that system that kind of comes on here. That's why you do see the slightly wetter than average anomalies. And with the flow around that upper level ridge doing something like this, we still keep the slightly wetter bias here. But I'll tell you, the midsection of the country, we're not drying out anytime soon here. And to wrap this up, I'm going to take you out a little bit longer. Tomorrow on Wednesday, I'll be releasing my new long-range outlook. We're going to be discussing this flow pattern because it appears that the model wants to continue to keep the flow doing something where we have this big protective southeast ridge. Now, whenever the atmosphere does that, it's naturally going to be putting in some cooler anomalies in this area. But I don't want you to think right now that we're going to go through May cold. We will at times be bringing in some warmth. We're going to cook those, we're going to heat up those potatoes and onions that are in the ground, sugar beets, get some early season warmth into them. But it's not going to be a scorcher of a May in terms of temperatures, at least what we're seeing right now from the longer term model. I just want to keep you aware, we are keeping much of this section of the country on the other side of the mountains very wet. And that has a big big impact on what goes on in terms of agriculture along the West Coast. That impacts demand, it impacts the movement of goods, it impacts transportation. I just want you to keep an eye on it, okay? With that, we'll go ahead and wrap up this forecast video. We at Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to the next Western Regional forecast. It'll come out on Friday morning, but I want to let you know we have videos every day talking about weather all over the U.S. and the globe, short-term, long-term, my.nutrienagsolutions.com. Check it out. Hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.